There's plenty more to say on that defeat to Everton yesterday, and there's some breaking news about Callum Wilson's future that I want to discuss on a bonus end of the season video. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I said from Pitside yesterday at St James's Park that I thought I'd have so many more thoughts to convey to you about the game and where it went wrong. Strange sort of video. I thought there was so much more I could say, so I'm going to get into some of that on this video, but also plenty of stuff from Eddie Howe's press conference about transfers that I want to talk about, and also a bit of breaking news about Callum Wilson from David Ornstein that is very, very relevant as well. But before we get into any of that, please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks to everyone who has helped me get to over 1,000 subscribers once again. I really, really appreciate all the support. But if you haven't already, do subscribe. Got a video looking ahead to the summer, explaining what's happening, coming out this week as well. Plenty more to discuss across the summer. There's going to be much more content, not less. So really do get involved if you haven't already. We're going to start with the Everton game. And as I say, yesterday I was caught between not being too negative off the fact that Newcastle just qualified for the Champions League, despite a pretty poor performance overall against Everton. But I really want to focus in on the tactical changes that Eddie Howe I thought got really, really wrong in this game. You can, of course, go and watch my recorded video from St James's Park. I'll leave the link in the description below. Go into as much detail as I would like on where I think Eddie Howe went wrong, why it was wrong across the board. And also, the mentality of the players as well, I thought was off. So we're going to start with the formation. It started out as 3-4-3, which as you'll be aware, I warned against on the preview for this game, because I thought it wouldn't suit a team that isn't looking to dominate possession. It suits going against Chelsea, it suited it against Arsenal, but against Everton, when you have to make the play and dominate the ball, really it just fell flat, and Everton sat in deep and counter-attacked Newcastle with that extra man in midfield, which made life very, very difficult for Sandro Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes, where they succeeded quite well at the Emirates, sort of playing in transition, playing in that space. They couldn't really do that against Everton because they were being outnumbered, so they were asked to dominate the ball but also keep that midfield protected. It was very difficult, and then Everton were able to funnel it out wide and find Jacob Murphy, who really struggled at wing back as well, and there are a couple of reasons why he struggled. We've seen him play wing back before. It suits him at times, but it suits him particularly when he still has that opportunity to play like the winger that he is, who runs into space and gets crosses in. With Harvey Barnes playing ahead of him, there was no space for him to run into. It nullified his game completely. We know he's not a right back. That's why there was the use of wing backs, because it was to protect Murphy on that side, but also allowing for the three centre-backs to play. I really think that Eddie Howe was really keen on playing Burn, Botman and Schär at the back yesterday. I think he was too keen. I think it would have been beneficial to drop one of them just to get an extra body in midfield. Come back to that in a minute. But with Murphy particularly, he didn't have that space to run into. His link-up with Barnes just wasn't there. And he really struggled to live with Iliman Ndiaye on that side. And Ndiaye was Everton's really key player. I thought he got on the ball and made things happen, caused problems for Newcastle, put fear into them, and that sort of transcended, as I say, across the stadium. As the game went on and the goal didn't come, it felt more likely that Everton was going to be the only one who scored a goal in the game as it transpired. But it was a very strange decision to put Murphy and Barnes on that side in a game where you have to dominate the ball, as I say. And when you consider, I've written a piece on Anthony Gordon, a lot of criticism has been unfairly put towards him, but he's not been in form in the last few weeks, and it felt very strange and jarring that Eddie Howe changed the system, or kept a system that doesn't really get the best out of the two wingers that he's got in form at the moment, and have been in form for the last sort of 2 months, if you look at Murphy and Barnes, in order to accommodate the winger who's really out of form. It was really a bad error. Rectified at half-time because he came off, and that says quite a lot about maybe how Eddie Howe understood that he got it wrong. But again, his changes were no better. I think Willock coming on instead of Miley would have been the player I would have played just to dominate the ball. Again, Willock is much better in terms of transitioning, playing into space. Similar sort of error there. He didn't have that space to play into, and so he struggled to impact the game, I thought. And with that change, Dan Burn stayed at left back. Again, the same three centre-backs still on the pitch. It felt like that was really where Eddie Howe started his planning phase, and that was a big mistake because Newcastle's balance was off. It didn't really work. Livramento moved across to right back. Soon after the goal, he moves back over to left back. Trippier comes on, and finally Newcastle have a bit of structure about the game. But soon they're chasing the game, and there was no plan in terms of bringing Callum Wilson on and Will Asula. And I think it's, as I said in yesterday's video, to me, the idea of bringing three strikers on is much better than the actual reality, because the reality of that was that Newcastle didn't have any coherence. There wasn't any real plan of it. It was just about getting more and more attackers on the ball. There was no real structure to the way that they got the ball forward, or any real way of trying to break down Everton. Everton were very comfortable as it went on. So Eddie Howe's management of the game, his starting 11, his tactical approach, and his changes really cost Newcastle in this game, I think. And they laid bare a lot of issues in terms of what happens going forward. Alexander Isak starting was great. It gave everyone a lift. Everyone was really relieved to see that happen. But the fact is that if Newcastle had the depth of quality up front, he wouldn't have been anywhere near the starting lineup. And it really reinforces my idea that, as I said a few weeks ago, a striker is high on the list. It's not fourth choice on the list for me. It's high alongside right hand side and centre back, because when Isak doesn't play and he can't be fully relied on all the time, that's got to be high on the list. This is where Eddie Howe went wrong. I did warn in the preview that I thought it wouldn't work out particularly well, but I didn't see this coming. I thought Newcastle were really flat. I thought the players failed to take responsibility beyond maybe Tonali. Pope in goal was quite good, and Tino Livramento. They were the three players we recorded the review on True Faith, and the three players that we talked about having fairly positive performances, those were the three that came up. But really, it was there wasn't enough urgency, and then the fear in I think Eddie Howe's comments are right about wanting to win the game too much, trying too hard, and that really set the tone for the second half, which was worse than the first somehow. And that, and then the fear set in, and thankfully it didn't matter in the end, because Newcastle are in the Champions League and because of what happened at Old Trafford. But yeah, really poor performance. I think these are important things. This was a game that showed that Newcastle do have a lot of work to do this summer, and it's a very strange season. It's the best season we've ever seen, absolutely, undoubtedly, but it's also a tale of two halves. Newcastle were really poor in the first half of the season. Their squad looks stale. They took a gamble in January that Sandro Tonali and Alexander Isak would stay fit at the right time. They have done. It's got them over the line, but they need so many more answers over the summer, and that's why I'm here to talk about transfers all summer. I'm really looking forward to it. More on that to come as well later. But yeah, I think that there's a huge lesson to be learned from this game, but it stemmed from Eddie Howe's tactical errors and the fact that he then didn't rectify it in the way that he should, with different changes, maybe Kraft at half time or Trippier. He obviously didn't feel like Trippier could play that much football, but I would have brought Kraft on that in that case, and Miley in midfield would have been a better choice as well. Because Newcastle are very effective when they play in the certain system with a certain structure that they just never allowed themselves to have in this game, and it really cost them. Big news from David Ornstein is that Newcastle have decided against the decision to extend Callum Wilson's current contract, but they are in conversations about new terms, maybe pay as you play, and possibly keeping him on beyond the end of the season. Now, I know that's going to be very, at least, polarising for a lot of Newcastle fans, but I actually think it's going to be overwhelmingly unpopular as a decision if that is the case, because for me, he looked like he was saying goodbye, Callum Wilson, yesterday. I've said so many times this season that he just doesn't look up to the standard anymore. His body doesn't allow him to do what he needs to do, and he hasn't really shown anything this season that shows he's capable of playing regularly for a team that's in the Champions League and regularly for a team that is pushing on and wants to get onto the next level. I wrote a piece for 442, which will be out this afternoon, about the team going to this next level, what the Champions League means. That's what it means. It's an opportunity to progress and go to a new level. But Callum Wilson staying really doesn't do that for me. Even in a pay-as-you-play deal, even with different terms, he just doesn't look capable. And often we've spoken about Will Asula being a better option than him, and Will Asula is a mile off the right standard for what Newcastle needs. As I said, a new striker is required because the gap between Isak and the other options is so is so grand. This would be a huge error in my opinion. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section what you think. But for me, Callum Wilson absolutely needs to leave this summer. For his own benefit, he can go and play at a lower Premier League side or even the Championship side and get some regular game time. But even as a pay-as-you-play deal, he's not showing that he's up to the standard anymore. It's not the same as, say, and this is why I think a striker is more important than a goalkeeper, because Nick Pope yesterday showed how good he can be. He was still making great saves. There's a shortcoming that obviously needs dealing with in terms of the ball at his feet. That needs to be improved. That's why Newcastle needed an improvement in the goalkeeping department. He's still very much capable in terms of playing to his strengths. Newcastle United benefit from having Nick Pope in goal. They don't benefit from having Callum Wilson up front, and it just doesn't make any sense to me why this would be the case. Let me know in the comment section below what you think. But given that Eddie Howe has had conversations with the Yasser El Mourayan and representatives from PIF yesterday, as he said in the press conference, that's a big thing that came out of it, about the need for quick action, about the need for improvements, fewer but quality additions, and that just, Callum Wilson doesn't fit into that to me. So this is a strange development. I certainly would advise against doing it if it was up to me. For me, Callum Wilson could have left at any point over the last 18 months, and there is quite a sad thing here that Wilson has been a brilliant servant to Newcastle. He's the third top scorer in the Premier League's history for the club, and he scored crucial goals at a time when the club was in a much worse state, and he deserves so much credit for that. But fan view is turning on him, and I think it's really a real shame. The responses to David Ornstein's tweet, the responses to any suggestion that he might stay, has been quite, in a sense, quite vitriolic, and it's not very fair on him for what he's done. But it also reflects the fact that it just isn't a good decision. It doesn't reflect ambition. It doesn't reflect where Newcastle need to go in the next direction. So let me know what you think down below on the Everton performance, as I say, a bit more of an in-detail view as to what I think went wrong, and also Callum Wilson. Is he going to stay? Do you think he has a place as a pay-as-you-play deal if he is a sort of third or fourth choice striker? Or do you think he should leave? Do you think now is the time to move on from him? Let me know. As I say, thanks so much for joining me. There's going to be a big content video coming later this week. I'm also going to do pieces for Forbes on my player of the season and why I think Eddie Howe is the manager of the season as well. So keep an eye out for them too. And I'll see you next time. Thanks so much.